probably.
You're not alone in this company, Sven. The notion that you're solo attempting shit is insane.
I just thought we count through again. What do you mean?
So Zero and you two, and I know Samako, you were there as well, right?
I was there as well.
I joined a little
Nice.
bit late.
Yep. They're like bruisers with range. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. For sure. And vice versa, right? It's important that mages understand how bruisers work as well.
Oh yeah.
Game fundamentals. Very, 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 very good. Very powerful. Okay. I'm gonna stream my screen. So obviously a lot of the things that we're gonna be going over now is a lot of it is relatively similar to mages. With a little bit of important details difference. So either way, I think it is important to go over some of the things again, even if I'm repeating some stuff. And for the people that maybe weren't there for the mage meeting, like Zero said, like there can be a lot of value for bruisers as well and healers as well to understand just general like all the fundamental classes, right? Like so, like obviously mage, bruiser, healer, all these classes are like the fundamentals of New World. They're fundamental classes. They're kind of what like your raid. They're like your main raid, right? They're like your bread and butter. Like they're the ones that make life easy for healers. They're the ones that make life easy for assassins. If your main raid is unable to build pressure, it's really impossible to play point. It's really impossible to play healer. It's really impossible to play assassin. So the fundamental classes, bruiser, mage, understanding the fundamentals of building pressure and then obviously not only building pressure but actually pushing through and killing and snowballing. These fundamental concepts are extremely important to understand across the board. So there's for sure a lot of value in listening into the healer meetings, to listening into the mage meetings, to listening into the bruiser meetings, just to get a little bit of an idea of what people want to do, right? So like a lot of you probably saw in the other meeting, right? Like if we have we have our standard quadrant setup. Like let's say we have group 1, maybe we have group 2 here, maybe we have like group 3 and 4, maybe we have group 5 and 6, right? Like whatever it might be. Okay. Essentially, so actually let's just no, let's just do this, just for simple for simplicity's sake. Okay. Let's assume that you're a bruiser in group 5. Okay, you're a bruiser. Generally speaking, as a bruiser, the bread and butter rotation of how you want to play and how you want to kind of move around when we're having these 50-50 fights is, let's say you're a top left bruiser. A lot of the times, you're not just top left. You're also top right, and you're top of point as well. But not only that, you're also assisting maybe this as well. So a lot of the times you're going to be playing a lot in kind of this motion. A lot of the time you're going to walk around like this in this kind of circle. And what I mean by that is like, let's say you're playing a little bit out here, where the healers are standing. So if we do a little bit of a circle where healers like to stand, that's not a really good circle, but so let's assume that the healers like to stand in a circle around the point like this, maybe 20 meters away from the point, right? It's really important that we as bruisers are actively moving. So let's see if I can do something fancy here. Select, boom, ha, this is a bruiser. Okay, so it's really important that we as bruisers understand how to constantly pressure and have as much uptime as possible. So we're going to talk a lot about uptime, because I think what I'm witnessing from a lot of bruisers, not only in this company but just across the board, like when I watch streams and things like that, is I think a lot of bruisers think that all they are their cooldowns. Okay, but what I want everyone to understand as bruisers is that a lot of our power comes from our left clicks and just general body presence. We spoke a little bit about body presence in the mage thing, but just even if you don't have shockwave, even if you don't have grab, um, I want Bruisers to understand a little bit about this concept of how you want to move and how you want to pressure. Okay, so obviously we have the obvious one, on the GA we have refreshing move, and we also have mauler stacks, right? So generally speaking, of course, if you have a grab and you have a shockwave, if there's a little bit of a clump on the point, generally you want to move in towards the point and throw your grab and throw your shockwave. And obviously you want to be communicating these things, right? Like if you're looking for a grab, you shouldn't do a countdown at grabs. So that's something we'll get into as well. But generally speaking, when you're throwing a grab, if you want to land a good grab, you cannot do a countdown. You cannot say, I'm going to grab in 3, 2, 1. That's going to be a shit grab 9 out of 10 times. That's just how it is, because you're forcing yourself to have to throw in that moment where you're counting down, basically. What I would rather encourage you guys to say is that if you do have a grab, or you have a shockwave, or whatever it might be, generally speaking, it's probably a grab. You should just say, I have grab ready, I'm looking top left, or I'm looking top right. Or maybe you don't have grab, you have grab in 5 seconds. You'll be like, I have grab in 5 seconds. You play, I'm looking top right, or look top right, or look top left. And then you throw it when you think it looks good, and you just call it out as you throw it. I'm sure probably you guys can probably relate to a lot of the things I'm saying, right? Like if you actually try to think about the moments where you try to count down, if someone you do count down, think about the moments where you counted down. Your grabs were probably pretty fucking shit.
It sucks.
Yes, it's trash. That's just how it is. And obviously the same thing goes as well. Like if you're looking for a shockwave, like you can't be like, I'm gonna shockwave in 3, 2, 1. Like of course that's not how it works, right? Like you're gonna shockwave if you see a good opportunity, like iframe shockwave on someone's grab, or if like there's a big clump on top of point something. Of course you're gonna like iframe shockwave, right? But you're not gonna like count down. Like same for a mage, you're not gonna count down when they're gonna scream, right? You're just gonna act based on opportunity. If you see opportunity, you throw. If you don't see opportunity, you hold. That's fine. But I want people to understand that there's a lot of power in just the left clicks. And as we move over to understanding what our body presence, so this X here, how it affects the pressure of the field by simply just moving. As soon as you guys start understanding what that presence in itself means, the more you realize that you don't have to throw your graphs as often as you think. Now, of course, like Bruises generally throw grabs almost on cooldown, right? Like myself included. That's just naturally how it is. But I also see a lot of people just throwing for the sake of throwing, or just using spells for the sake of using spells. But I want you guys to understand that whether you have cooldowns or you don't have cooldowns, moving your body around and like just left clicking and pressuring these healers and pushing them away. Because like imagine, okay, you don't have cooldowns, you don't have shockwave, don't have grav, whatever. You can't support a clump, right? But still, a little bit of a clump happens. Let's say a clump happens. Maybe here. Let's say a clump happens 12 o'clock. Okay. And little Johnny Bruiser over here. It's like, oh, I see big clump. I want to help, but I don't have grab. I don't have shockwave, or maybe I'm a little bit too far away to grab a shockwave to follow up on that clump. But I still want to assist that clump. What's the best way to assist the clump? It's probably to pressure whoever's trying to help that clump, right? It's to pressure the healers. It's all these healers that are standing like this and looking at this clump. That's one of the best things that you as a bruiser without cooldowns, or maybe even sometimes with cooldowns if you're too far away to assist the clump, it's to go and make these motherfuckers move. So for the sake of making this clump die. Okay. So like I mentioned a bit in the mage meeting, just in case some people didn't hear, but one grab, one shockwave, one scream, oblivion, all these things coming together to a clump, that's not what kills a clump on its own. That only kills a clump, again, if there are people doing this, pressuring the healers, pushing them away, while others are bombing. Okay? Outside of that, like obviously we can talk about small things as well. Like, you should be left clicking people as much as possible down here in your downtime. You should be wrecking balling them. You should be using POD. I'm going to mention this once. POD should almost always be used on light users on the outskirts of the point. So it should rarely ever be used inwards towards point. Even if there's a clump, I'd rather want you to POD out towards the healers to make them lose, to go below 100% HP, to just stagger them, interrupt their heals, put debuffs on them, put slows on them, generally just make them move. Because as we discussed in the mage meeting, any kind of small damage on a healer makes healers feel like they instantly need to either move or pop a potion. So you're putting a lot of CC with a simple POD. Okay, so generally speaking, going forward, I hope that every single VOD I watch from now on, every POD gets used. 9 out of 10 of PODs gets used um, on lights on the outside of point, anywhere around, and not just directly towards point. The only time I would personally encourage you to just direct it at the biggest clump possible is if you need healing. That wasn't really a big thing last patch, but I think this patch, obviously, you've all felt the suffering of the cleanse nerf. Your own healer's getting pressured a little bit more than usual. Or maybe you're getting a little bit less healing than usual. So obviously there are going to be cases where you're going to want to use it for healing. But other than that, if you're not going to use it for healing, please do make sure that you're using your POD as much as possible towards the people outside. It doesn't have to only be healers. It can also be the assassins. Like, let's say we're having an assassin battle down here, right? It's our 5 assassins versus any enemy 5 assassins. What do you think happens if you as a bruiser PODs all these 5 people? Well, what happens is that our assassins win. What happens if our assassins win? Cool, you just POD'd them. Now, what ends up happening is that we end up progressing. Our assassins win. So we now move up. What do you do after PODing? You move up too. And so now we progress. So we're always constantly helping each other. And there's a lot of like small ways to help each other progress. We didn't really talk too much about the power of body as much, right? But obviously, as we get into it, I'll show a couple of clips too. But for the people that weren't here for the major stuff, but even for the people that were here for the major stuff as well, it's pretty similar in the sense that, if we watch, let's see, we're gonna use some micro. We're gonna roast him a little bit, okay? We have the usual, we're coming from the left, we're coming from the right, we're baiting a little bit to the side points, and then we wrap in when John says wrap in towards B. Again, what I see a lot of bruisers, as well as a lot of mages do, is that they ooga booga into the first clump. They fight as soon as they can. And, the first time I saw this VOD, I knew this was going to happen. Like, everyone's going to, maybe myself included, right? I get out, fine. But everyone just takes the first fight possible. Like, some people, yeah, enemy's going to use grabs on the first people. But what do you think Son Michael should be doing here? Should he be going and assisting this? Or should he maybe move over here and maybe POD these people? Or, maybe, move like this and just putting his body here. What do you think helps more with this? Does it help more to move like this and be a part of this shit? Or does it help more to maybe move like this, POD all these fuckers, or just put your body over here? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, we'll watch it. But obviously, like, what I see a lot of bruisers do, like whether it's on the first engage onto B, whether it's a rotation over to A, or even in forward as well, is that I see a lot of look all these people are just fighting.
I'm sorry, Jesiz. I think you're streaming Paint.
I'm streaming my Paint. I'm fucking trolling. Holy shit! Why didn't no one say anything? Thank you.
Because I thought it was actually on Paint that you used like a name.
Okay,
right?
okay. Thank you. Holy shit. Okay, I'm gonna explain it again. Okay, so I mean, you guys probably remember everything I said, but I'm gonna show you the picture I was talking about. So if you see here, what I see a lot is that, let's say, take a better picture. I was just saying that right here, I was saying, what is the best action to do to help this? It's probably to move over here and POD all these guys, right? Or even putting your body here, rather than moving like this and being a part of this shit, right? So, maybe this shouldn't be happening in the first place. It probably shouldn't. All of us here are probably fucking up a little bit, right? Fine. But the thing is, mistake happens, and sometimes enemy use a lot of spells to just force this to happen, and sometimes there's nothing we can do about it. But the big thing that we can do about it is that, if I'm moving, let's say I'm an individual, I move like this, and enemy decides to throw 5 grabs on me, that's not allowed, because what that should then give us is that because they're throwing a lot in this space, it should allow us, everyone else, to freely move in past and stagger all these people, or just get up here and put your body here. Because again, this idea of space, it essentially is just, if we go back to the Paint, let's see if I can go back a little bit. I can't. Whatever. Anyways, if when we're coming in, if there's all this fighting happening here, like, the best way to help this is again by putting your body up here, because all of the reds that are contesting us here and contesting us here are gonna feel inclined to have to respond, right? So I want all of our bruisers to understand that when we're moving into these fights, we want to avoid. I need to close the other tabs, I guess. But anyway, we want to avoid taking the first fight as much as possible. Whether it's rotating over to A or rotating over to C or get in the fort, we want to play for space first and then fight. Okay. I see this way too much, and going forward, I would love to see this like as much as possible. Every time we're rotating in, play for space first. Okay. Maybe I can show you a good example of this. Let's see if I can erase this shit without fucking up. Like this is my POV basically, and like let's say I just came from A, right, to defend A. Now I'm rotating back to B. The goal is to avoid fighting. Fuck, I hate this shit, man. Okay, anyways, the goal is to avoid fighting right here in this space as much as possible, but rather take position and get on the other side of where the fight is going to happen. Okay, you'll see it. So a lot of fighting normally will happen. They will try to contest you here. They'll fight you right here. But ideally, you want to get over here, where Revolter is standing. You want to get over there as much as possible. Stagger them as much as possible, and then get over here, move your body here. And what ends up happening? Look, all these people here, all this happens. You get on the other side of where the fighting is going to happen, and you sandwich pressure. Boom. Use a sandwich. This happens every single war. Like you just put your body over to a more aggressive position, and either enemy stays and they don't respect you that you're in a sandwich position, and you find a good sandwich, or they respect and you create space for all of these people here, all these blues here, to enter freely towards the point. Okay. Now I could have just taken the first fight here and just started hitting this guy and just fought right here. Like let's say this clump, I could just take this fight, like some Michael did here, right? But we would not progress, right? Like we would just lose. And that's how you lose. So again, I'm gonna say it one more time. It's about taking space first before fighting. It's really OP. Okay. Let's see if I have another good example. Even on attack. Okay, look, we're doing the same thing. We're wrapping over towards C, and now we're trying to enter in towards B. Obviously, we're only coming from one side, so it's a little bit different, right? But we're still coming a little bit from the right. We're coming a little bit from the left. And I could engage on the first thing I see, but for me, it's more important that I get in deeper and create sandwich pressure. So look, I move over here, and just wait and see. Look what happens from simply just moving my body over here and my group over here. So I call my entire group to move over here. Look what naturally happens. We're not trying to kill anyone. We're just trying to bait and create pressure. Look, they're all coming to us. They're all coming to us. And then look what ends up happening. We're progressing. We're maybe not progressing so much over here because they have a lot of people, but we're very much progressing on this side, right? Simply because of what we're doing here. So, it's really, really OP to just put your body in these places. And then obviously, as we've moved over here and we've progressed, it's now our job to, as the people that have moved over here and gotten space to move here, to move like this and sandwich pressure these guys to force them to move, and for us, our blues here, to progress. Same thing, right? Let's see if we do it. I mean, let's just see my bot and see what I end up doing. Maybe I'm a complete noob and a complete troll, right? We play for space a little bit. We find some nice little clump fights. Fine. Let's see. Yeah, we kind of do it. Maybe not perfectly, right? But we're slowly progressing by just having our bodies up here. I haven't really moved out of my position. We're slowly progressing.
I had a question to this.
Yep.
Are you a group? Were your group assigned to play like in this kind of area at start, or do you
Not
know?
in the start.
Okay.
So to give you an idea of how our group was actually assigned to be, our group was assigned to be. I can tell you how our quadrant was. So our quadrants. So let's say we have the entire box here, right? And we have the quadrants. Our group was in this position. We have a group up here. We have a group here. But we basically what we said was we say when we build pressure, like if we can build pressure in this entire sector here, all this zone there, then we play to move the pressure, and we play to move the pressure. But the thing is, I as an individual I want to move the pressure. I want to avoid fighting here as much as possible and fighting here as much as possible. Or, well, I can't prevent it, right? But I want to make the fighting that's happening in this area, this spot here, and this spot here, as good as possible as an individual, right? So the best way for me to help this right here is to put my body here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm essentially helping what is an inevitable clump fight by simply putting myself in the best spot possible to then assist as good as possible,
Okay.
right? Because I'm causing pressure by simply being in a sandwich position. Okay, I'm not saying like we're gonna go into the next war and everyone's gonna suddenly sandwich and like be a fucking rat and a snake, but I just want it to be in people's heads to understand that there is more than that meme of the monkey that says where clump. We can be smarter than little Johnny here that sees clump and he just walks towards this clump. Sometimes we could be more than that, right? Like of course if you have a shockwave and you see a good grab, of course you want to enter in towards it and you want to shockwave it, right? Where clump, fine, that's good. But I also want everyone as individuals to understand that there's more to it. So like maybe we can um, let's see control one. Let's see if we have a good example. Maybe it will happen, right? But there's always choices. So if we look at this situation, for example, right? There's always choices of potential, like let's say a clump is happening here. And then there's also all these healers up here. Maybe these healers too, right? There's always a choice. Like generally speaking, whenever you're a bruiser, you have option one, your option two. It's really, really often like this. Even if you have cooldowns or you don't have cooldowns. Like generally speaking, you have options. And it's gonna come down to how good you become at judging where you can find the most value. Generally speaking. So obviously if I have POD, maybe I can POD all of these healers, and then I can go and grab a shockwave this. Maybe I have no cooldowns at all. Maybe then it's the best choice for me not to enter number 2 clump. I should maybe rather move my body over here and just start left clicking all these people here and push them away. And what happens as soon as they get pushed away? These guys become isolated from the healers. They're too far out of range. So then as soon as I push them, now not only have I reduced my cooldown of my grab, and my shockwave is coming off cooldown as well, I can then turn back in with high mauler stacks and bomb. So this is like the basics of Bruiser, right? It's the basics of high uptime and finding constant value, and making these good decisions every single time. We can kind of see what decisions I end up making. I mean, I'm not making perfect decisions by any means at all, but I'm constantly looking for value, right? Like I should probably POD all these guys here, and then I should look for something on point, right? Or maybe even just go here, maelstrom all these guys here. All these people here should be maelstrom by me. One maelstrom will literally make all of these people stop healing for 4 seconds, 3-4 seconds, and making all 4 or 5 healers, preventing them from healing for 4 to 5 seconds. That is a kill. That is at least 1 kill. That's just how it works. That's at least 1 kill. A lot of the times. So I should have maelstrom these guys, but I end up just moving my body towards them, right? Like you can tell. Oh shit! Sorry. I want to POD. I got staggered. Fine. I had the right idea. I move over here. I see the option. I put my body here at the very least. I see it's juicy as fuck. I'm gonna go for a grab. Fine. This happens sometimes. I do my combo. Everyone knows the combo. As soon as I've done my combo, I exit. And as soon as I've exited, I look for immediate value. I look around and I see all these healers over here. I just start pressuring them and getting my cooldowns back up. Okay, I've now pushed them away and these guys are now isolated. That's why I'm looking towards point, right? Don't quite have my cooldowns yet. Just stacking my maulers. I have maulers, I throw graph. Full empower graph. And I don't kill anyone. Fine, that happens. I use my spells. Now I exit again and I go up and do it again. Over and build pressure on these guys again. So you can see how like every time here, look, I POD these guys and as I POD, I pay attention to what's going on and I move over and I just push these people. And it looks simple, obviously, like it's never simple, right? Like when you're actually playing, but the general fundamentals of value will always relatively remain the same. Like obviously sometimes you're gonna have to make creative decisions and stuff like that, but For the most part, there's so much value to be had outside of just grab or shockwave. There's so much value. Even just the presence of you putting your body in certain positions, it's really, really OP. And obviously sometimes, like if enemy don't have a lot of healers or like people are isolated, we do want people to point step a little bit. We do want people to maybe even sometimes go and dog down people on point if they don't have a healer, right? If their healers are pushed away. Or if you have a lot of outside pressure, then they're isolated on point and we need to go and punish them, right? Sometimes. Okay. Let's see if there's something else I missed. Okay, point. Fort. We need to talk about fort. We must talk about fort really quick. Okay. Let's see if we have a good example. We do have a good example here. Okay. So one thing when it comes to fort, I spoke a little bit with John as well. But generally speaking, just like I said in the mage meeting, it's important that none of you are waiting for like someone to do a countdown for you or someone in your group saying, oh, now we can go. Because 9 out of 10 times, if you wait for permission to go and you don't just take an opportunity to go, you're going to get caught in the door. That's just how it works. Like you're going to get caught and you're going to get fucked because you chose a bad timing to go, or you're all moving at the same time, which makes it super easy for your opponent. What we want instead, and probably what John is going to like start calling as well in the future, is that once these doors are down, once these horns are down, he's going to say, okay, now you can look to get inside. And what he means by that essentially is that you guys as individuals, whether right here is Son Maiku or me, coming in from the back gate here, or let's say we came in from the front gate, we want individuals to push through, not fight at the gates, push past, keep going. Don't fight at the gates, don't fight at this gate either. Push in as deep as possible, help each other get in, not by fighting, but simply by just pressuring. We do a little bit of a POD, just pressure, and look how much attention this causes right here. Look, this guy's looking this way, this guy's looking this way, and in a couple of seconds, maybe one more. They're gonna look this way towards us, and what ends up happening? As soon as the people outside of this gate, all these blues, I want all of these blues to pay attention to that when that moment appears. Oh, an opening happened. Someone just created space for me to enter. So as soon as this guy has just done a POD, or this guy has just done a POD and created a little bit of space, or these guys have maybe they're moving away from the gate for some reason, or you see an opening, fucking enter. Just enter. Get inside. And that's only one part of it, right? But obviously, as soon as we get inside, we don't want to just take the first. We don't want to just take the first fight, right? Like maybe we get a little bit of space, but we don't want to take this fight here. We do not want to fight in these areas. This entire zone here is not a place to fight for the attacker. It is not. For defense, obviously, when we're defending, we want to fight here as much as possible. Fucking good. Away from the point as much as possible. But if we're attacking, you'll see it in a second here. If we're attacking and we create a little bit of space, or you see an opening to get inside, stop all this fighting. I don't want to see anyone fighting near the fucking gates. Boom. Move over here. Take space. Maybe even fucking move over to the other side of the fort if you need to. Even if your side of the fort is maybe your assigned position, like maybe this side of the fort is yours. When it comes to the initial part, like of entering the fort, I do not want to see anyone being restricted. It's like inside fort, John cannot carry you with calls. Your group leader cannot carry you with calls. I cannot carry you with my gameplay. Or calls or whatever I try to do, or whatever any individual inside the fort tries to do. It's going to come down to you guys as individuals to understand that once you enter this fort, that you are able to operate on your own, and understand that as soon as you make it through the gate, you understand that you need to find value to help others get inside without dying. So, whether, like, let's say you move in here, whether it's just quickly turning around and creating sandwich pressure again to help people get inside, or whether it's getting inside and moving over all the way here and maybe helping someone over here, or maybe wrap around, maybe help someone on B gate, pressure these people to push away from the gate, to move them away from the gate. And so we allow people to enter. I really, really, really want to emphasize it so much that I want to, we need to get better at entering against good players, against good companies, because good companies will fuck us as much as possible. And obviously, everyone's experienced this fucking dummy tech where everyone's charging up their ults. Dude, we're gonna lose 9 out of 10 times if we fight here. It's just how it is. What we want to do is we want to get inside. If enemy want to use their detonate, fine. We don't use ours. We just get inside. We make them use spells, fine. We take space first, and then we fight. Same thing as outside on the flags. We move into positions first, and then we fight. Right? Okay. So we've talked a little bit about that. Let's see if there's a good example, because I'm playing a little bit off of being a little bit spontaneous here with this meeting. I don't know, I actually have too much planning going on. I'm just kind of going with the flow. But anyways, generally speaking, like obviously, whenever, like the same goes for us well, like whenever we're actually inside and we're fighting and stuff, a lot of the fighting will maybe happen in this area, like a lot of it will maybe happen in this clump area, maybe like here, maybe like in this area as well, right? Maybe even sometimes there'll be a little bit of scraps going on up here. It's important that everyone's kind of able to operate on their own in the midst of the fighting, especially right now, obviously with the cleanse nerf and the detonates. You can't just ooga booga it in Fort anymore. I mean, you couldn't really too much either last patch, but especially this patch, you cannot be a complete turn off brain ooga booga gamer. Like, you need to tiptoe as much as possible. You need to find as much value as you can with your spells and your left clicks on the outer edges of the clumps. But also just prioritize, especially when we're attacking, prioritize being alive as much as possible is one of the best things you can do. Because essentially, I'm going to explain to you guys the fundamentals of Fort when we're attacking. You do not win off of coming inside and just finding a wipe. Right? Because essentially what's going to happen is, we might go into a clump, we might create a clump here, we will kill some people, they will kill some people. Even if we kill 2 and they only kill 1 from us, so we get a 2-for-1 trade, that's not a good trade in Fort. Generally speaking, of course. Generally speaking, that is not a good trade. That only becomes a good trade after pressure has been built. So what we want to have happen, the fundamentals of Fort, is we want to get inside as much as possible. Get inside as much as possible. Obviously, I'm putting arrows over to the spot. I don't want 50 people to come here and stand here. I just want, generally speaking, us to come around, like we would around the flag outside, as much as possible, around the point as near as possible, right? But the number one priority is to get inside the fort. That's number 1. Number 2 is then after getting inside, it's obviously we need to fight. We need to fight a bit. We need to throw some spells. We need to tiptoe, maybe find some kills, build some pressure. But then the goal is to, on these respawn, when as soon as, let's say, the respawn bot says respawns in 3 seconds, inside the fort specifically, because they spawn here, and they spawn here, and they spawn here, and they spawn here, and we spawn all the way fucking out here. As soon as the respawn happens, we need to play safe. And we need to wait for people, our respawns, to come in all the way, which usually takes around 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds. So, generally speaking, as soon as you hear respawns now, we wanna play a little bit safer. Maybe pop a gem dust, maybe pop a cleanse, maybe just step out a little bit, even if you have cooldowns, step away a little bit. Maybe look towards the respawns even, like up where they're coming from. And just take a little bit of time, and then boom, John in 7 seconds, you'll be like, okay, bomb in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then boom. Now we look for a wipe as people are coming in. As people are coming in, we're looking for a fat fucking bomb, fat fucking bomb, fat fucking bomb. And we're just looking for this, and that is how you win Fort. You do this a couple of times, and you win the point. You win the point, and you win the fort. That is the only way to win Fort. And it's been like, I know all of you have probably experienced it, but it's even more aids this patch to play Fort than it was last patch. Just because of the cleanse nerfs and the detonate, right? So I'm just saying, like, the fundamentals of how to play Fort and how we build pressure on Fort and how we win the Fort, how we push it over the line. Those things are even more extreme than they used to be because of detonate and cleanse. So really, really, really take these things to heart. Understand, like, you cannot just rely on John's calls. You guys right now in this meeting need to understand on your own exactly what it is John is going to call, because your decision making will be better if you understand what it is he's calling and when he's going to call it. So all of you need to understand it as well. Okay. One thing I didn't really go over, obviously, there's a little bit of like Bruiser fundamentals, like how you use your spells and stuff. I think generally speaking, I mean, it's pretty fucking obvious, right? Like you can obviously grab, and the usual is like shockwave into melee, right? Sometimes, obviously, if let's say your teammate's throwing a grab, you can instead of grabbing yourself, you can go and shockwave it, right? Look to shockwave it and then maelstrom it and pressure and stuff. And then you can move on, left click, stack up maulers, and then throw your own grab, right? And then hopefully someone else shockwaves. Okay, these are simple basics. I'm sure all of you know these things. I'm not gonna repeat this. But one thing I've noticed that was a little bit of an issue last patch. I'm not sure if I can find a good example of it, but I'll probably talk about it a little bit more in depth with you guys in individual reviews. But I think what I noticed between really good bruisers and maybe mediocre bruisers, maybe lesser experienced bruisers, let's call it that instead, is that especially now with the detonate coming into play, there's a lot of insecurity when it comes to clump fighting. Okay, so a lot of times when you're a bruiser and you're going into clump, and another opponent bruiser goes towards you, and he grabs you first. Okay, boom, grab has been thrown. Maybe you threw a grab too right after him. Last patch, what you could do was just obviously you could kind of like if you were cleansed and like you were chilling maybe on an Oblivion or a Sacred, you could kind of just stay in there, not really give a fuck. You could just kind of iframe and just outplay him under grab pop, right? Now, especially in clumps, that's not really the case anymore. Like you obviously, especially if they're popping detonate and stuff. Like, generally speaking, you're gonna want to exit a little bit more often than usual. But I also at the same time want you guys to start being a little bit critical. Like when you're watching your own bots, be a little bit critical of every time you enter a clump, or yeah, just generally every time in your clips, every time in your bots, every time you've entered a clump, start being a little bit critical of should I have entered this clump, or did I play this clump correctly? As in, did you go in here? Should you have exited? Should you not have exited? Should I have shockwaved, or should I have held my spells and waited for his shockwave and then iframed it and then used my spells? Or should I just have instantly iframed and then charged out? Or things like this. Like I want you. I'm not gonna tell you guys what is right and wrong. It's never black and white. But I want you guys to not just default to, oh no, he's detonating. I must triple iframe. I see this too much on this patch. I want you guys to slowly start building confidence in these clump fights, because at the end of the day, like we can talk so much as we want about how we're walking around and we're pressuring as much as possible, and things like that will help, right? Because we'll choose better clumps, no doubt. But at the end of the day, when we go into these trades, these clump trades, we need to win them. Or if we're not going to win them, we need to know how to exit and not lose and not salvage it, right? We need to know when to get out. So I want people to start like thinking about these things, and so we can start building a little bit more experience and confidence with these things, and not just default to be scared of this fucking detonate, because yeah, it does damage, but maybe if you have full stam, or maybe you have Oblivion under your feet, or maybe you have Sacred under your feet, maybe you can just trade with him and just not give a fuck, and just left click him and just get a heal, just call for heals. So on that note, I mentioned it right there. One thing that I'm seeing 75% of bruisers in this video game that they're not doing enough is they're not calling for heals enough. Wow, that's annoying. I have to talk as a bruiser. That fucking sucks. Well, it's just a reality. Like we as bruisers, not only do we need to call when we have our grabs, when we're looking for a grab, that's like the baseline. When we're looking to shockwave or stuff like that, that's like a baseline of what we can do with our spells. Or I want to play here. That's good. We need to constantly be doing these things as a bruiser. But like we just talked about, like with these clump fights, like when you're entering into what's point, or entering into more dangerous spots, into death zones, or whatever we want to call it, maybe you're entering point, or like whatever it might be, you as a bruiser should know when you're gonna need heal. So when you're gonna need sacred. So we can obviously healers can pay attention themselves, and they probably should. but we as bruisers can make healers' lives better. We can make it easier for them. We can preemptively tell them when you're gonna need healing. We can tell them, I'm gonna need healing. Oh, I'm gonna need healing again. I'm gonna need healing again. Like we can say things like this. I'm gonna need sacred, and then you hear, oh, sacred on you, and then now you know. It's not just a random sacred. Like maybe you're just playing the video game and a sacred just pops on you. You don't know if it's yours. You don't know. Like it's better if it's like you're cooperating with your healer and you're having that communication flow and talking to them, and you're the one. If your healer isn't always just gonna like perfectly have eyes on you and perfectly gonna call for you, sometimes you're gonna like you guys have probably experienced it. It fucking aids. Like healers are not so good at the video game. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. A lot of healers in this game are not very good at the video game. And what I mean by that is, little Johnny Bruiser over here, he's gonna be walking. He wants to fight all the way over here, and he says, "Oh, I want to fight at the bottom left of the point or whatever." And boom, his healer just popped a fucking sacred on him as he's running. That's fucking bad. So not only can we as bruisers start to be a little bit more communicative of when we're gonna need these sacreds or when we're gonna need healing, but also as a result, as we start doing that more, these shitty sacreds that a lot of bad healers do, when you haven't even entered the fight yet, they're gonna be less. It's gonna happen less, and it's also something that you guys as individuals, when you're going over your VOD, whether it's on your own or whether it's with your group, I would definitely encourage you guys to watch it with your healer, watch your healer's POV as well, and just say, could I have communicated better about when I needed healing? Could I have communicated better on when I needed sacred? Why did you sacred me here? Or why did you not sacred me here? Stuff like this, without it being like a blame game, just more about what can you do, what can you as a bruiser do better to make your healer better, to make your healer play better. Okay, this is a big responsibility as a bruiser, and obviously the same goes for as well. Like, how can you make your mage play better as well? It's that clarity. Like your mage, we spoke a little bit about it in the mage meeting, but obviously, like, if Bruiser guy here, he sees something and he sees, oh, I'm looking for something top right. If you say in advance you're looking for something top right, the likelihood of your healer to get into position to be ready to heal this, or even your mage to get into a better position to be ready to support this, is much higher. So communication is a big one. That's something that I would definitely encourage all of you to start being a little bit more mindful of. The standard is that all of our bruisers are able to communicate effectively about their own spells and about these things, like these things. Even if you're maybe not the leadership type, there's a baseline of communication that needs to be met. Okay. Let's see if there's something else. Okay, so there's one more thing. Obviously, I've not seen all of your VODs, but I've seen quite a few of all of you bruisers VODs. And myself included. I've had to slow down a little bit. Like, obviously, this is a fucking old VOD, right? I can just fucking ooga booga it and just keep fucking left clicking, just keep going and never slow down. Reality is that the game is not like this anymore, right? Like, look, I'm in the fucking shit and I don't have any fucking T-buffs on me. OP cleanse. That's just not the reality anymore. Like, cleanse is just taking such a big fucking hit that reality is just that when shit like this happens and you get this on your bar, a lot of the times you guys are gonna have to just fucking exit because you don't have cleanse. Right here, obviously, so Michael can stay in and he can call for heal right now and he can pop his cleanse and maybe he'll be fine because he have maybe high stamina or he's on Oblivion or whatever. Fine, but I want you guys to start being a little bit more mindful of and just be smarter. We cannot be ooga booga bruisers and not use our brains and just default to cleanse pot anymore. Look at the fucking cooldown. We need to understand that when the bar looks like this, and even if you have cleanse, the the decision, generally speaking, should be to exit, cleanse, or if you don't have cleanse, you should still exit, and you don't have cleanse, cool. Then you just take a more passive stance, and maybe you find more value on this on little Joey over here that you can left click with a GA, right? But you essentially put yourself away from the death zone because you're so fucking rendered and you're so fucking debuffed. Your healer cannot heal you. So this is something me myself, I need to get way better on this patch as well. It's about understanding your limits of how aggressive you can play, how much uptime you can really play. But at the same time, I do also want to encourage everyone to push yourselves. Definitely push yourselves. But at the same time, be mindful. Be mindful of how the cleanse change has impacted us. Because more often than not, the detonate's not what's gonna kill you, and the scream is not what's gonna kill you. It's you being so fucking rendered and then entering this. That's what's gonna fucking kill you every time. Okay. Maybe there'll be some more things I can talk about, but for now, are there any questions, guys, about anything I've talked about?
What happens when things don't go great? When we lose an area,
Mm-hmm.
how do we not reset specifically, but even if it's fort or flag, because most likely we're not going to be winning all of the fights. What is the best case? What is the best approach to gain again momentum? Because once you lose momentum, you give a meter, they take a mile, for example. How do you get back from that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I just need to know what you're describing. Are you describing a situation where in fort we're like 10 to 5 or 10 to 50 people, or are you describing a situation where okay, we're resetting? It's so bad we're resetting.
Not specifically resetting, because resetting is a good actually way to come back with numbers and put a fight on even terms. Maybe fort fight is a bit more is not an example I was looking for. Basically, fort flag fight where flag fights where it's not easy to reset. You don't have anywhere to reset or
Okay, so it's amazing question. So obviously an immediate situation, right, is obviously in the first 2 minutes when we're capping one of the flags, we're going to be a little bit at a disadvantage, right? So this is a little bit, maybe it's not the perfect example, right? But either way, it would look kind of what you're describing, right? We're losing the fight right now. You know, if we take a look at, again, if we're looking at the entire quadrant picture here, obviously we have the quadrants. Enemy is fucking controlling this entire part of the quadrant. They have control of 70% of the field. Okay, we're gonna call this the field. This is the field. Okay, they have field control. They have 70% field control. How do you recover when you're getting pressured and they're pushing their lead and stuff like that? I mean, sometimes you're gonna have to reset, right? Maybe we should probably reset towards A if it's this bad. But really, the best thing you as an individual can do is what we talked about in the beginning, which is, you know, if enemy has like all of this control right here, and let's say all of our blues are in this position here, you know, once again, one of the best things you can do is probably not to try to fight this at this front. It's probably to try to come in from a better angle, right? Yeah, and then assist it that way, and just build that pressure. It's the same as like I'm gonna refer back to it again, but you know how like this is obviously an extreme example of it's a losing situation. Obviously, we haven't even started yet, but in reality, it's a losing situation, right? But here, a couple of individuals can make such a big difference on what is looking like a losing situation. Look, we have 5 people over here. We're at a man disadvantage. But still, a couple of individuals can make a really, really big difference by simply just putting their body over here and allowing, making all these look, this guy, this guy. He's a perfect example. He feels like he needs to look this way, but now this guy becomes an issue. But well, whoa, what happens if this guy only looks this way? Well, then this guy's an issue, right? So all you're doing really is just you're causing all the enemies that are here to feel forced to have to pay attention here and pay attention here. And so the natural response is for almost any individual in this video game is I don't like being here, right? I don't like being here. So generally speaking, people are going to exit. That is going to be the natural response for a lot of people.
I have a question about this scenario you described here.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example where we saw on this video that you're creating like a space for your team there. So and the enemy's team is coming closer towards your group, and so your teammates can push up as well.
Yeah.
What let's imagine if they are gonna engage hard on you there as
Yeah.
as a group. Is it more important that you like disengage from this
Yes.
kind of situation? I assume that than actually committing to the fight. I mean, yeah, it is
Mhm.
what yeah, it is more important that you disengage from the fight and create space and time again. Or
Yeah. 100%.
yeah.
It's the same as when you're entering the sport, right?
Mhm.
Once again, like it's once you've moved your bodies in here, it's important that you're not playing for a fight or playing to kill.
Mhm.
Similarly to here, it's important that when we've moved up into this position here, that we're not forcing anything. Like we need
Mhm.
to use spells and we need to do something. We can't just AFK or they will kind of ignore us, right? But it's important that we understand that we're not playing to kill anyone. We understand that all we're doing is we're fighting to make them respond. And if you fight with the mindset that I'm playing to make you respond to me, you will not die,
Mm. Yeah.
right? But obviously if you're going with the mindset that, oh, I'm moving up top right, oh, look at them, oh, look at the top of point, grab, shockwave, scream, everyone's gonna fucking die. You're committing, you're going for a coin flip.
Yeah.
You do not want a coin flip in situations like this.
That's why Revolta is dead, Kappa.
Yeah. No, I like this is obviously a little bit of the issue, right? Like I'm playing with people in my group, and I'm obviously making calls as the group leader, and they're just kind of blindly following, right? So they were committing to the play without really understanding that all I was really trying to do was create space and not actually die,
Mhm.
right? So this is obviously where we make mistakes, I make mistakes, we learn, and now they've experienced it, and then now the next time we do exactly this, they will know how to play it perfectly,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But now obviously you guys have the benefit of seeing it, so we don't even have to go and die. You can kind of just learn from other people's mistakes, right?
Nice.
Are there any other questions, guys? No? Okay.
I have actually another one.
Mhm.
I mean, this game is all about situations, and it's a very dynamic game, and you can tell that one situation is like another one.
Yeah.
But there was one example you showed earlier where you showed that as a bruiser you have mainly two decisions, like do you want to commit to a clump, or do you like don't have CDs up, or that you go to the healer side and pathing the healers and pressure? Yeah, like this
Yeah.
situation there. Um, do you? I find it hard to actually make a decision to when I actually pressure the point,
Yeah.
because I find myself playing way too much on the point as a bruiser
Right.
than I think I should.
Mhm.
And I always like listening to calls that we should where we should bomb the point, of course, but I still find myself way too much on the point than I should.
Yeah. 100%. So if so, let's talk a little bit more in specifics. I mean, we'll go over some of this stuff as well in the pre-war, and we'll do a little bit of role playing in the pre-war as well. But let's assume, okay, I'm gonna leak a little bit of our new quadrant situations, but let's assume enemy is defending B and A. Okay, we're attacking. Cool. This is B. Okay. And enemy is defending A. Okay, cool. What we'll be doing is essentially we'll have one group here, one group here, we'll have one group here, and we'll have one group here, and one group here. Okay. So essentially, what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to achieve um, I'm fucking retarded. What the fuck? Spaced out. Anyways, what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to achieve what's it called, field control. Okay.
Mm.
So what we want to do a lot of the times. So let's take group two. Okay. What group two wants to do is once we build a little bit of pressure on our backline, group two wants to advance, right? And so obviously the same goes for when we're building a little bit of control on our left side. Maybe group five wants to advance, right? And so we slowly build pressure, and eventually we build field control. We hold the whole thing, right? Because obviously enemy is gonna do the opposite. Enemy is gonna maybe play a little bit more for the opposite control. You guys have probably witnessed it, right? Where enemy have a lot of fucking people here, and they're like trying to hold that side a lot, right? And they're like contesting us like either into our back right, sometimes occasionally maybe like this as well, but usually they're trying to take a more this side stance. And so generally speaking, what attackers will be doing is that they'll be taking the opposite stance, and they'll be trying to play for 70% control, and then slowly build that pressure, right? So in terms of what the individuals should do within the groups, I think if you're group, let's say group 2, if you're a bruiser, one of the main things that you want to do, if you're one of the ones that are maybe playing in the top side, or you maybe one of the ones that are supposed to move up once you build pressure, is obviously prioritize pushing the advantage, right? So a lot more often than not, once you build pressure, is generally speaking, you'd rather look this direction. Now, obviously, if you're group 3, or maybe sometimes maybe even group 1, maybe even group 4, one of the groups that maybe aren't playing to advance as much as possible, sometimes these groups have a little bit more responsibility to look towards the point, right? But what we already spoke about already, right? In terms of what the bruisers want to do, is that there's a balance with everything. So again, if we're talking about, let's make this red, okay? If we're talking about how our bruisers constantly want to play. So if let's say group 1, okay, a bruiser from group 1, he plays up here. Again, if you're as a bruiser, you always like move like this. You pressure the top side. You wrap in towards point, throw your grab and your shockwave. You go back to your reset position, and then you continue pressuring again, and you build pressure, and you build pressure, and you build pressure, and you build pressure. Grab comes off cooldown again. You re-enter again. You throw a grab, and you just keep doing this over and over again, right? So you play a lot based on your cooldowns. You have grab, shockwave. Generally, you might want to have maybe a little bit of an eye towards the point, right? Now, what you're asking is, when should I be point stepping? And when should I like just be standing on the point? And when should I just be left clicking someone on point? For me, it's not really black and white. Like I think, if we're thinking about how the healers play, so obviously, if we have the healers maybe stand rather on this blue circle, and we as bruisers are walking around on the red circle in between. We were playing somewhere in between, and maybe pressuring the healers, maybe using cooldowns on point. If we're playing like this, sometimes if let's say bruiser walks out here, pushes healer away, then maybe once we push the healers away, now we want to go on to point, and just, even if we don't have cooldowns, just go on to point and just start left clicking someone on point, and just start taking the point. Start left clicking a point member down to death, because you've just pushed his healer away. So there are situations like that. Like for me, generally speaking, I would almost always encourage people to prioritize building pressure, field pressure, because you're not gonna win the point. Like you're not gonna, if you're a bruiser here, and you just by default go on point, it will not tick. That will not happen. The only way you tick is if you build pressure first. It starts ticking naturally when you build pressure. So if instead you wipe your quadrant, or you've built pressure in your quadrant, instead you then decide to push up, you then build pressure up in the top side now, and then now we just generally push pressure, and we now have gotten pressure all around, just naturally. That's just how it works. We've just built pressure on the outside. We've now built control of this entire sector here. So now, what do you think happens to point? It suffers. Enemies' point suffers. Their point group suffers. You probably, like our point group, I don't know if there's any of you guys in here that are playing point, but even if there's not, like, you can probably imagine that our point group have been suffering. They've been suffering in a lot of our wars, especially the ones where we don't have control, right? Whether it's in fort or whether it's on flags, the people that are standing on the point itself are fucking suffering because we don't have outside control, right? So that's what I'm saying, that naturally, if you, instead of being hyper focused on, oh, I need to be on point, or oh, I need to be on the outside, if you just play naturally for value, individual value and pressure, these things will come naturally. And like I said, you're maybe a bruiser here, you play to move your pressure and get pressure. Now I would definitely encourage you, especially as a bruiser that's bottom left, to definitely, rather than moving up here and staying up here, probably once you've pushed that pressure up, maybe prioritize the point a little bit more. and then stay on point and start lefting the people on point and finishing them because we've pushed them and built pressure, right?
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it explains your or like answers your question.
It did.
But
Okay. It did. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions, guys? Mm-hmm. I think it is not very important. I think it is honestly harmful to stick to your quadrant. And what I mean by that is like exactly what I just explained, right? That once we build pressure down here, like let's say you're back left. Once you build pressure down here, if you're staying down here, we will never advance and we will never do anything. Like imagine in this scenario here, imagine I fucking move up here and I do this and I create space and some motherfuckers refuse to move out just because their quadrant is this. They refuse to push up, or the people that are in this quadrant over here, they refuse to push up. I feel fucking trolled. I'm doing this for nothing. So, even if it's not a situation like this, obviously this is a little bit of an extreme situation, right? But even if it's not a situation like that, like I still want everyone here to understand, okay, maybe this is my quadrant, this bottom left is my quadrant, but I understand that once I've built pressure, my goal is to move that pressure, extend that pressure, push that lead, and then once I've pushed that lead, I'll probably look to wrap in. And once I've wrapped in, maybe I exit out towards my quadrant. And so you just keep moving in this circular motion of pressure. Sometimes, obviously, maybe you're down here, maybe you can do it, you can help this quickly. As soon as you've helped this, maybe you wrap in towards point, then you move over here, you move it down here. Like you're constantly just as someone who is playing, you can see how you can do so much as someone who's down here. You can extend your pressure so much, potentially even like this, right? There's so much to be done outside of just your quadrant. And I want to really encourage every single one of you that if you're a medium bruiser in New World or a medium mage in New World, you cannot be a fucking role player. You cannot be a fucking dog that does what he's told. You must be, yeah? I think to a certain extent, short term, that's a good thing. I think long term, the goal should be to have both bruisers just use effective communication and be on the same page naturally. And all that should really be happening, in my opinion, should be that I think you should have a natural communication flow where one bruiser says, oh, anyone really from that group says, oh, let's move top left, or oh, let's move top right, or let's push up, push up, push up. Like so you just have a general, you're on the same page in terms of your macro and how you want to play as a group. I think that should be established and anyone can really call that. I don't think there needs to be one lead for that. I don't think it has to be the bruiser. And then I think both bruisers need to be very capable of saying when they're going to look for a grab or when they're throwing their grab. I think both bruisers should be very capable of shockwaving for each other, and generally just naturally overlapping. As you guys build more synergy and you get more comfortable in the group. But to answer your question, I think short term, it is quite effective to have obviously one lead bruiser and then one that's a little bit more supportive, right? That follows a little bit more. But yeah, I would definitely encourage all of you bruisers and mages to try to develop yourselves into players that are able to make your own decisions. And if I'm a bruiser, right? Like let's say I'm a top left bruiser. If I say, "Oh, look top right," and I'm already moving, and I'm saying, "Oh, look top right," I don't want my fucking mage over here and my bruiser that's playing top left, where we were initially, to fucking run to fucking Narnia to help me. I don't want that to happen. But what I would like to have happen in general is that I in advance, I'm also just looking for pressure, just like these guys. We're all thinking about the game the same way. And oh, we've built pressure. Let's extend it and let's push it and let's move it. Um, and that they're even without me saying it, already on the move with me as well. And I say, oh, look top right, and they're generally speaking going to be a little bit in a better position to follow, right? Or vice versa. But obviously, there's going to be situations where you're not going to be able to follow. Maybe you don't have cleanse spot. Maybe you need to play a little bit more passive. Fine, that happens. But it's also important, like I said, that you're not just being a sheep. That if you are over here and maybe a bruiser moved over here, that you're not just walking over here. That you are an individual, even if you are maybe quote unquote a support bruiser, that you're able to find your own value, whether it be in this entire area yourself, right? So does that answer your question? Are there any other questions, guys? Nope. Nope. Doesn't seem like it. But yeah, in terms of like the pure details and like maybe the more micro stuff, and a lot of these individual macro decisions, we will be going over those in the individual reviews, and that's one of the things I'm going to be doing in the rest of the evening. I'm going to try to speak to some of the coaches and try to delegate a little bit of work so we can get those individual reviews going. But a lot of the more detailed shit, we will definitely be trying to be a little bit more active with that shit and get that going. But other than that, like if you guys ever have any questions about the things we've talked about now, or maybe something that's a little bit more unrelated, just anytime, just reach out to me or any of the coaches, really. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
Nice, nice.